and welcome to another episode of Tesseract Talks, the place where we put the spotlight on tech trends, startups, and VCs. I'm your host, Marko, the founder and CEO of Tesseract Analytics, and it is my pleasure today to have Brett King as our guest. He's the founder and CEO at the Futurist Network, a world-renowned futurist and media personality that has been a board and policy advisor to Obama, Xi Jinping, and the Gulf Cooperation Council governments. Also an international best-selling author, and even President Xi cited one of his books, Augmented, in respect to artificial intelligence. Brett, welcome. How are you?
Thanks, Marko. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great. Okay, my first question is, how does one become a board and policy advisor to Obama, Xi Jinping, and the GCC governments? If you could give a brief overview of your career to the audience, and then at what point do governments start to reach out for advice?
Well, it's all come through the work I've done as an author. And thankfully, I must have hit some right strategy notes and policy notes in the books that I've written previously. For Obama administration, it resulted in me visiting the White House in 2014, which was pretty cool. From a kid from Melbourne, Australia, to get to visit the White House. I had breakfast in the wardroom there and met with the National Economic Council team to talk about fintech policy. I think we're going to talk about the President Xi story in a bit more detail later. And then today I am working with the Prime Minister's office in the UAE, advising the Ministry of the Cabinet, particularly the zero bureaucracy movement here in the UAE. As a futurist, I've been working with the central bank, advising the UAE central bank for a couple of years now. And I gave a speech in November last year. Actually, it might have been the year before. The Prime Minister's office, a representative of the Prime Minister's office was there, and they invited me to attend the World Government Summit as a speaker, and that led to the advisory role. I think it's a combination of the thought leadership in the books and the speaking as a communicator that has given me this opportunity. But as an author, what more could you hope for than to have influence on policy setting on the global stage? It's pretty cool.
Wow, they're really impressive, amazing journey so far. And now one big picture question. AI has become the defining technology of our time. From your perspective, what's the most important AI-driven shift we'll see in the next decade?
Well, AI as a tool set represents, sort of a game-changing technology. Compressed intelligence is how Geoffrey Hinton refers to this, and given that he's won a Nobel Prize for his work on deep learning, I think we can listen to that. Eric Schmidt puts it interestingly, he says the arrival of intelligence of a non-human kind is a really big deal. And I think that's sort of framing AI, from an interesting perspective, is that it is both sort of compressed human intelligence, but at the same time, it is something more than what we've experienced. We are going to have to negotiate with AI. That's that's sort of a game changer. And I think moving forward, like we think of smartphones today or Google, as a technology, our children will grow up never having known a world without AI. And it's going to change, everything, in terms of the application of technology in some very specific areas, the sciences, the employment, longevity science, and things like this. There's going to be some pretty significant changes. Hopefully, we'll get some new tools as well that will help us as a species be able to adapt, because, we do have some significant challenges coming on the next 20 to 30 years, not just the impact of AI, but also the impact of climate change and similar issues. There's a lot of changes going to happen in a fairly short period of time for the species, and it makes it a very interesting time to be alive.
You've long predicted how technology disrupts banking. How do you see AI changing the way people manage money and interact with financial institutions?
Well, in the medium term, the inclusion of AI in your personal stack, your personal technology stack, means you will have access to a personal money coach, a financial advisor with extreme capabilities, something that only private banking clients would have had access to previously. You'll have available 24/7 built into your personal AI. Getting out sort of 20 to 30 years, things look a little bit more hazy because the key problem we have with artificial intelligence is that it's most likely going to disrupt capitalism itself. That is because, if you look at what is the intent of AI from the likes of Sam Altman and other entrepreneurs that are deeply involved in this, the intent of AI is as a massive efficiency gain from a corporate perspective, so making corporations far more efficient. Altman classifies this or categorizes this as the ability to create like single person unicorn companies and this type of thing. So the intent of AI has always been to eliminate human capital from the labor force and make corporations as efficient as possible. The most efficient form of a ride sharing company is a driverless, car-based technology. The most efficient form of production is autonomous factories based on robotics. The most efficient form of transportation, packages being delivered by robots and so forth. This really is sort of a fundamental shift of economics 101 and supply chain management, where in the past, we've always anticipated that as demand for a product improves, and, we would have to increase the supply of human capital in order to satisfy that demand. But this is different. AI only requires more processing cycles. So it's designed essentially to eliminate human capital. That's the only mechanism we have for wealth distribution today, is giving people a job. And so this is why you hear these thought leaders, these entrepreneurs talking about universal basic income and these sort of mechanisms, is because we're going to have to keep capitalism going artificially by paying you based on taxing robots and algorithms to keep you consuming. But that really is a short-term solution. So AI, the more AI and the more automation you put in the system, the less likely capitalism is to survive. Now, that's not to say that I'm suggesting socialism is going to take over or something like that. We actually need new economic thinking to understand the world that's coming for tomorrow. And, it's being classified, a sort of a post-scarcity world or a world of abundance and these sort of things by various economic thinkers. At the same time, we have circular economics or donut economics coming into play, and sort of the thought of growth, GDP growth and so forth, falling out of passion, out of interest for the world's economies, because we're looking for other things rather than just pure growth. We're looking for more sustainable economics and things like that. So AI is part of a sort of a broader economic and shift in organizing principles for human society.
And you already touched upon here what was supposed to be my next question, but which is like, with every breakthrough come these challenges like bias, trust, job displacement. And then what are the biggest risks you see with AI adoption, and how should society address them? So now here you already mentioned how we have like increase for demand, but then like traditionally we would like have a increase with supply of human labor. But I guess this mismatch will create a lot of jobs displacement, and it will probably take some time until we find where will these new jobs be. Because with every technological revolution, it kind of takes time for this to happen. But I feel like we're going at such a high pace here that it's almost scary, like because we don't see the new jobs appearing.
Well, that's sort of the key issue, right? Economists would argue every time we've disrupted jobs in the past, we've created new jobs. But we've never had a technology that can displace white-collar workers and blue-collar workers across multiple industries simultaneously. That's never been the case. So we've never faced a broad technology that can disrupt every sector at the same time, from accountants, lawyers, doctors, truck drivers, everything simultaneously. So this is different. We do not have the economic tool set to argue competently that we'll be able to absorb those changes rapidly. So when people talk about the risk of AI, and they talk about machines taking over and things like that, my concern is not so much about robots taking over the world as much it is that the rate of change will be so quick and so sudden that we're not equipped in terms of the human systems that we have today to adapt to those changes rapidly. And that's what's going to create the system shock. There's no real way around that because capitalism is hungry for AI because of the benefits it's going to bring in massive, capital growth and profitability. So, you would have to itself dismantle capitalism in order to reduce the shocks of AI, and that seems extremely unlikely. So, the biggest challenges are philosophical, not really in respect to specific economic treatments. I think coming out the other side of this, in 20 or 30 years' time, when I ask, what do you do? Your answer to that question will not have any economic relationship to your work, right? So work will not be an economic factor because in highly autonomous societies of the 2050s and 2060s, most of what we have to work for today will be just provided by the autonomous system. You could call it a Star Trek style future or a techno-communism if you want to look at it negatively. But the reality is, what is the benefit of AI if not to provide a better standard and quality of life for every human on the planet? Why else are we doing this than to create a better world? That includes improvements to longevity. It includes ending poverty, ending disease, ending homelessness. These are the potential outcomes of this tool set. But in doing so, it has to destroy, sort of traditional economic view of the world.
I know banking and financial industries, one of the industries that you covered the most. But outside of banking, which sector do you think will be most radically transformed by AI, and how might that reshape everyday life? Because as we just said, it's kind of impacting both blue and white collar workers, which we didn't really anticipate 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, Harvard did an interesting study, just came out, in August of this year, which showed that, already looking at LinkedIn, job advertisements and so forth, we're already seeing a reshaping of employment. So you are seeing teams that typically required 3 junior people attached to a senior manager, that a senior manager now can, just with AI, have the same output as a team that they used to have 3 people attached to it, as an example. But I think in terms of the industry that's going to see the biggest shifts, I would say healthcare. Yes, financial services and sort of our concept of money, yes, definitely going to be disrupted. But, we are seeing AI diagnostics already having major potential shifts in terms of the way we think about healthcare. The application of this in terms of specific medical sciences. So Demis Hassabis and the Google DeepMind team that won a Nobel Prize for protein folding, personalized medicine, application of technologies, advances in gene therapy. And this is even before we get to longevity escape velocity in the mid-2030s, when we'll presumably be able to extend human lifespan significantly. So this requires a completely different view of healthcare. It was just essentially data-driven, sort of real-time, analysis, use of AI injected into diagnostics and into treatment, a very personalized approach to AI based on your genome and your blood work and so forth. Very different from, the healthcare system today, where you go into a doctor and you say, these are my symptoms. And the doctor says, well, based on this, I'm going to give you this medicine. It'll be much more highly personalized. And this is the only way we get to that sort of application of healthcare that produces real longevity results at the individual level. This is a whole new set of tools, including the fact that probably within the next 15 to 20 years will eliminate most forms of cancer, eliminate many major diseases. And it's not just AI, of course, it's the application of CRISPR and gene therapy technologies and things like that as well. But that, we will have new tools in terms of healthcare that humanity's been seeking for millennia. So it's pretty interesting time.
Exciting times ahead. And President Xi Jinping cited your book, Augmented. Can you share a bit more in what context that happened and maybe touch upon key takeaways from the book?
Sure. So Augmented was a book I read in 2015, or called Augmented: Life in the Smart Lane was the full title. And the story goes, I've done obviously a lot of writing in the banking field. Well, the governor of the central bank reportedly read this book and gave a copy of it to President Xi during one of their meetings. And President Xi read the chapter on smart cities, and this aligned with his thinking in terms of strategy for the cabinet. And he bought a copy of the book for each of the cabinet ministers to read this particular chapter on smart cities. So that's pretty interesting. Yeah, that's sort of the chain of events. I found out about it on the 8th of January 2018 when he presented in his national address to the nation. My book was on his bookshelf, and there was only 2 books on AI at that time that was on his bookshelf. There was my own book, Augmented: Life in the Smart Lane, and one other book. The Chinese people, they scour his bookshelf every year when he does his national address to see what he's been reading. And so it was obviously placed there with some intent. And we were contacted later by the protocol office, and they thanked us for our contribution to the Chinese nation in terms of policy setting. And it's been pretty cool since to visit China, and people say, "Oh, President Xi has your book." It was certainly a surprise. Yeah, when I woke up and saw my phone blowing up with all these messages about, "Hey, your book was on President Xi's bookshelf," it was pretty intense.
I can imagine. And just like you said, Chinese people, obviously, they look at the signals, and if they see a foreigner's book kind of approved or being read by the leadership, it must be huge. And in preparation for our call, I saw that in your profile. And my background actually is I did my master's in Chinese European economics back in 2012, 13, and I lived 2 years in China. So that kind of caught my eye, like, oh, wow.
Yes.
I kind of met a foreigner who was cited by Xi Jinping. Well, sounds great. Thank you so much, Brett, for coming to the show and sharing these amazing, valuable insights. And for our audience, where can they follow your work if they're interested to keep an eye on what you're up to?
Sure. You can go to brettking.com, which is my personal website. Obviously, check out LinkedIn and my socials. But also, if you're interested in our podcasts, thefuturist.com is our main brand with the Futurist podcast, and also Breaking Banks. You can check out all of those podcasts at provoke.fm, which is our podcasting network where we host about 16 different podcasts.
Great. That was all for today, Brett. And I hope to see you again in future on another episode of Tesseract Talks.
Thank you.